Welcome back. Today we're going to dive into the most dangerous back channel in American politics, the quiet coordination between Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, a circle of billionaire deal makers like Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and a plan that could make them all of them richer at the expense of Ukraine, Europe's safety, and what's left of democratic norms. And the wildest part, the only person inside this machine who's actually standing in the way is Marco Rubio. Yep, that Marco Rubio, Trump's Secretary of State, who is also serving as acting administrator of USAID and acting national security advisor. Let's get into it. Trump keeps repeating that he'll end the war in 24 hours, but he's not talking about peace. He's talking about a deal. His version of the deal means Ukraine gives up territory. Putin gets a victory he can spin as historic. NATO fractures. U.S. credibility collapses. And Trump walks away with, well, something. The question is, what does Trump want actually? As we know, Trump for decades has been chasing a Trump Tower in Moscow. That is certainly something that should be on his that we would expect is on his list. Financial lifelines from opaque overseas money, loan arrangements nobody can fully explain, which he likes a lot, and a lifelong obsession with cutting deals with strongmen. Now, let's talk about Steve Witkoff, one of Trump's closest billionaire friends. Witkoff isn't just a real estate developer. He's part of a global ecosystem of investors who make fortunes navigating sanctions, legal gray zones, authoritarian markets, and high risk, high reward projects that depend on political chaos. He's tied into an orbit of Gulf sovereign wealth funds, Russian adjacent capital seeking Western legitimization, global real estate and redevelopment deals, and investment circles that thrive when the map is being redrawn. So when Trump hints at a deal, people like Witkoff see frozen Russian assets eventually being unlocked, reconstruction contracts in shattered cities, land privatization on a massive scale, luxury projects linked to oligarch money, and a revival of Moscow-friendly business channels. Witkoff represents the class of billionaire intermediaries who win if Trump and Putin get to redraw Eastern Europe. Ukraine is just the land in the way. Now, you cannot talk about Trump's global deal making without talking about Jared Kushner. This is the man who secured a $2 billion investment from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. He keeps close ties with Gulf leaders who coordinate oil policy with Russia. He built private diplomatic channels with foreign intelligence and rulers, used his official role to set up relationships that later benefited his private ventures, and understands how to turn geopolitical crises into private profit. So when Trump says he can end the war through negotiation, you bet Jared is part of the unofficial architecture of that deal. For Putin, this is a perfect. Trump wants a win. Jared understands the money flows. Gulf states want energy stability and leverage. Oligarch capital wants legitimacy and access. And authoritarian leaders want the U.S. out of Europe's security equation. Jared's silence is not neutrality, it's a tell. He's moved into the world of international private equity, where war sanctions and reconstruction are just the line items in the business model. Ukraine is just the collateral damage. Inside the Republican Party, nobody wants to cross Trump, even when the European security and democracy itself are on the line. You've got the House members parroting Russian propaganda, senators suddenly tired of Ukraine, party leaders who know better but stay quiet to protect their careers. But inside the actual administration at the top level, there is one person still pushing back, and that's Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. Say whatever you want about Rubio's politics in the past, but right now, he is the single most important Republican voice inside Trump's own government, defending Ukraine's right to exist. From the inside, Rubio is pushing for continued Ukraine aid, arguing against territorial concessions to Putin, warning that abandoning Ukraine is a geopolitical catastrophe, trying to keep NATO and Europe from being thrown under the bus. This is not the 2016 primary debate Rubio. This is the Rubio who has seen the intelligence, read the cables, and understands how dangerous Trump's deal with Putin really is. And that brings us to the uncomfortable question. If Trump is determined to cut a grand bargain with Putin, what happens to Marco Rubio? Trumpworld has a very simple playbook for internal dissent. They silence you, they isolate you, they remove you. Look at the pattern. Officials who testified in Russia, gone. People who contradicted Trump's narrative, smeared. National security professionals who told the truth, pushed out. Now, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, is a massive obstacle to any Trump-Putin peace. It's really just capitulation. He has access to intel on Russia's war crimes, influence over diplomacy, development, and security policy, a platform to warn Congress, allies, and the public, and enough stature that his resignation or firing would be impossible to ignore. So if Trump decides the real deal with Putin matters more than Ukraine, NATO, or democracy, Rubio becomes a liability, a threat, and someone both Trumpworld and Kremlin-aligned voices would be very happy to see removed. And unlike when he was a senator, Trump does not have to work around him. He can fire him. He can dump him as Secretary of State, replace him at USAID, swap in a more compliant national security advisor, smear him as a deep state globalist or disloyal, turn the right-wing machine on him overnight, and all it takes is one decision, one tweet. Inside the Pentagon, the State Department, CIA, NSC, there are still career professionals working to support Ukraine, counter Russian disinformation, protect European security, and keep U.S. commitments from collapsing. But here's the truth. Career people cannot stop a president who openly sides with Putin, a son-in-law floating between the Gulf, Mexico-adjacent money, and private equity. Billionaires whispering about how much money they could make on reconstruction, and a party of terrified of Trump's base. And that's why Rubio's role matters so much. He's just not another bureaucrat. He's the top diplomat, the interim head of America's development arm, and the interim national security chief, all in one person. He's the one figure at the top who can say directly to Trump, no, you don't get to hand Ukraine to Putin. The question is, how long does this last before they move to sideline him? Let's zoom out and take a look at the full picture, the part that nobody wants to say out loud. Putin wants more land, a broken Ukraine, a fractured NATO, a weakened EU, and America too divided and too corrupt to lead. Trump wants an historic deal he can brag about, a photo op where he can play the straight peacemaker, the return of Russian money flows and business opportunities, and the admiration of one dictator he's always chased approval from. Jared wants more Gulf investment, a global private equity empire, long-term foreign leverage and relationships, a world where autocrats owe him favors. Witkoff and the billionaires orbit wants reconstruction contracts in Ukraine if it's carved up, real estate and infrastructure projects tied to oligarch money, sanctions relief so Russian-linked capital can move freely again, and stability, not through democracy, but through deals with strongmen. In that equation, Ukraine is the bargaining chip. Europe is the collateral, and democracy is the overhead cost. And stuck in the middle of all this, of course, is Marco Rubio, the one senior official in Trump's own government loudly saying, we cannot sell out Ukraine, we cannot reward Putin, we cannot pretend this is peace. If Trump pushes ahead and cuts a deal with Putin, it won't be peace, it'll be a transaction that enriches a small circle of billionaire intermediaries, rewards Putin for mass murder and invasion, shatters European security, and leaves America morally bankrupt. Right now, Rubio is the only person at the very top of this government structure saying no. So the real question becomes, do they fire him to clear a way for a deal? Do they push them out, replace them, and pretend everything's fine? Because once that happens, once the last internal obstacle is gone, there's nothing left between Trump, Putin, and the billionaire deal makers. And a solution that sells out Ukraine, weakens Europe, and rewrites what America stands for. Even today, the president of Finland made such a statement today that Ukraine may end up being compromised. So thanks for watching. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should Rubio design or go public or stay inside and fight? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so more people understand what's really at stake. This story is far from over. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.